Hey, what's up? It's Bon, and today I'm going to talk to you about my perfect next Mass Effect game and what I think it may look like and what I hope it looks like, and a bunch of my ideas, and why I think some of them are definitely going to happen. But first, if you like Mass Effect or just like video games and news related to that in general, please consider subscribing to this channel, liking this video, and commenting with your thoughts, questions, or to just say hello. Let me preface this by saying that this is my personal idea for what the next Mass Effect game would be like that would satisfy all of my personal desires and hopes for the next game. If you do not like my ideas or my reasonings for thinking why I may be onto something, that's totally fine, and I genuinely encourage you to comment below about what you think may happen and why you think that may happen. I'm going to break this down into a few sections instead of trying to just drone on endlessly and without any real organization. Let's start off with the setting. From what we've seen so far and my own personal hopes, I believe we'll be playing a game that takes place shortly after the conclusion of Mass Effect 3. This could be supported by a date-like series of numbers in the 2022 N7-day teaser art that seems to mention a 2190 year. I've also said that much of the styling of the vehicles, like the Sky Cars, seem to suggest we're still in the trilogy time frame as opposed to some theories that the game takes place much later. I simply don't think some wrinkles on an old CGI trailer is more convincing than what we've seen since then that simply doesn't look like we're in a world that has advanced hundreds of years. I do believe the game will primarily take place in the Milky Way, as suggested by all of the teasers seemingly taking place in the Milky Way locations, as far as we can tell so far. That said, we did see the Andromeda Galaxy at the start of the 2020 trailer, and Mike Gamble, project director of the game, has heavily suggested Andromeda's involvement in the next game on various tweets. I just find it hard to believe that they'd go all in on another Andromeda game already, and I am assuming that his suggestions mean that we'll get a lot of references to that story and possibly some breadcrumbs leading to an eventual Andromeda true sequel in later games. There are bits of evidence in the teasers that others have noticed that dispute my predictions, and that's not surprising at all. Between Gamble's teaser tweets and the way the next game has been talked about so far, it's obvious they want us guessing and speculating as much as we all are. Things like the Andromeda store brand signs and the art that appears to be Ilium, or even the human figure in the 2020 trailer seemingly having initiative style armor, are all convincing arguments for another take on what will be happening in the next game. I still think there's a preponderance of evidence for my thoughts, but until we know the truth, it's for fun and everyone can have their own ideas. Now, let's talk about the story. The story for the next game will depend a lot on what BioWare decides to do with the setting, as I just talked about, as well as if they choose to canonize trilogy choices or not. At this point, I think they must canonize some aspects of the story simply to make the storyline streamlined enough that the game can be completed in a reasonable amount of time. The main issue with trying to respect every single decision in the trilogy would be that it would require essentially making 3 different games, at least to start off the next game with, and I personally believe that is not in the cards. With that said, I believe we'll see a game that has canonized the perfect destroy ending of Mass Effect 3, with the Reapers being wiped out, all synthetic life being wiped out as far as we know, including EDI and the Geth, as well as the Mass Effect relays all being badly damaged but repairable, with many of the galaxy's forces in the Sol system after the Crucible fired. It is suggested the various fleets do begin extra long journeys back home after the war has concluded. I think if the game takes place 4 or 5 years after the events of Mass Effect 3, we may be surprised with how much has been rebuilt so quickly, and we'll find out that some of the relays are already repaired, and some normalcy has started to come to the Citadel systems again. I've speculated for a while that there are keepers on the relays that would do the bulk of the repairs as we saw them do in their mysterious ways on the Citadel. I don't necessarily think that canonizing Destroy means that the Geth and synthetic life are gone forever, especially because the 2021 teaser poster very clearly references the Geth, and I'm certain they are going to play a big part in the next game. I believe the next game may not introduce a quote-unquote big bad to replace the Reapers, and instead will be kind of a political thriller where the Citadel Council is trying to reestablish power in the galaxy. Opportunistic alliances will be trying to seize power during this rebuilding, and we may even see new systems explored as everyone looks for untouched planets and places around the galaxy that they can access by activating new relays and possibly pulling in entirely new species to the game. I believe we may even deal with the remnants of the initiative made up by many people left behind by the Andromeda mission, and likely even the mysterious benefactor who eluded us in Andromeda. I even think we may be dealing with the legacy of Cerberus as their remaining loyal members start up splinter groups in the spirit of the elusive man's quest to elevate humanity above all else. This may have even been hinted to in the 2022 N7-day teaser that shows a new relay being constructed in Cerberus colors, with Liara telling someone that the Council will be furious about something the humans are doing. The question of who we play as exploring these events and likely impacting them significantly is the million-dollar question. I personally want to play a Shepard for one more ride with Liara and a new crew, likely with some old friends, as we see the impact of the war across the galaxy and how it is recovering after the victory. I believe we've seen multiple hints in the teasers to Shepard's return, as well as possible a leak on the BioWare merch store in 2022 that clearly mentioned Shepard and the crew's return to the next game, and a description of the purchasable 2021 N7-day poster. I understand why some want Shepard's story to be over, especially those who've been playing the game since 2007, but I think a good way to bring the franchise back to its former glory is to lean on nostalgia, and giving us one more ride with Shepard is a great way to do that. If we don't have Shepard in as the protagonist, I believe we'll play as a fresh N7 graduate has been assigned to assist Liara with the tasks I previously mentioned of helping reunite the galaxy, helping those who need to be helped, and to identify the groups that may be trying to disrupt the efforts for their own selfish agendas. I do believe we'll play as a human in the next game, as Mass Effect seems to be a human story told from a human perspective. I think a fresh N7 would be a good opportunity for Liara to tell stories about Shepard and the Trilogy crew. If we do not play as Shepard, I don't want Shepard in the game at all, even as a Hackett or Anderson role. I'd rather play as the legend or remember their legacy through Liara and various other monuments and stories from around the galaxy as we explore. I do believe that there's an opportunity to learn more about Andromeda and the Initiative, even if the next game takes place shortly after Mass Effect 3. The Andromeda mission would have been a colossal undertaking involving huge dry dock facilities and hundreds of thousands of engineers to build the ships. It's unlikely that all of them would have been able to go on the missions that were launched, and even when the Reaper War started, they were probably working on more ships after the Quarian Arc launched. I think finding these facilities and the left behind members of the Initiative, possibly even the Benefactor, would be a great way to lead us down the path that would eventually lead to a true Andromeda sequel and a game after this next one. I think it's very important for this next game to reestablish Mass Effect universe in the Milky Way and to give us closure there before we try to make Andromeda happen again. After what Andromeda did to BioWare and the Mass Effect franchise, I believe they need to be cautious moving forward and remember the trilogy nostalgia can be your friend if done well. Gameplay, last but not least. Gameplay is an interesting topic because the engine of the next Mass Effect will be very important to how it plays out. It seems to be accepted at this point that the next game will almost certainly be using Unreal Engine 5. This is due to multiple job listings specifically for the Mass Effect game that have also asked for Unreal 4 and 5 experience, as well as multiple game journalists, especially Jeff Grubb, reporting this from their sources. The use of Frostbite on Andromeda still gains a lot of ire from the players due to the issues that BioWare obviously had with animated characters and various oddities with the engine that it was not designed for with a game like Mass Effect. If the game does return to the Unreal Engine, I very much expect to see the combat return to the feel of the trilogy more so than Andromeda. The cover systems and gunplay from the most recent Gears of War game will likely be a starting point since Unreal and the Coalition are very tight partners in development of the engine. Obviously, we'd see a lot of changes by BioWare to account for the skills that are unique to Mass Effect. I do hope they take some of the lessons from Andromeda and find a way to allow us to be more mobile, to even possibly include the jump jets on some classes or specializations. When it comes to the interactions with NPCs, I do expect them to lean back to what the trilogy did more so than Andromeda. I believe a glaring omission from Andromeda was the Paragon and Renegade system, even though it had mixed reception in the trilogy. I hope that we would be able to reintroduce the Paragon and Renegade system, but make it more subtle and possibly even make the choices less obvious for us in the moment. If we had to actually figure out from the context which responses would garner a good or bad response, it would be really fun. I also would hope that alliances, crewmates following you, and even romances could be impacted by how you stand morally and the choices that you make that impact the galaxy, the crew, and specific NPCs. I also wonder about the structure of the gameplay. The trilogy tended to be fairly linear with some opportunities to explore new worlds or hub areas. Andromeda went much harder into mostly open world areas with a few linear missions and such. I would like some throwback to the linear style of storytelling, but with some of the planets that we can explore and the complete side missions and content on. The Andromeda open world areas were a bit tedious to explore and were mostly empty, which was reminiscent to Mass Effect 1's barren, unexplored worlds, despite the way games had advanced in the years between. I understand that the modern way of making games almost requires open world areas for a game like this, but I truly hope they learn the lessons from Andromeda and don't do the open worlds just for the sake of it. There's a lot more details that I could drone on about, but I think this is a good start and it hits all of the big points. I understand not everyone will agree with my thoughts, reasoning, and hopes, which is fine. Feel free to let me know what you think, what you want, and why you think your own ideas may be right. I expect to get a little bit more Mass Effect info over the summer at a possible EA Play event in June, as well as some more teases late in the year during N7 Day. Obviously, BioWare and EA will focus on Dragon Age a lot this year, but it seems like Mass Effect isn't really playing second fiddle, and I don't expect that to change for now. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, like I said before, please subscribe, like this one, and leave a comment down below. And that's all I have. So until next time.